So you decided to play Restaurant Tycoon 3, which is known to be one of the best tycoon or simulator games out there. So you think about making the next most elegant and most beautiful restaurant only your dreams could dream of. So you open up the game and claim your first ever plot and start thinking about what type of restaurant design you want to start with. After all that lengthy setup, you get to pick where your first menu items would come from. You then pick out the best name you can think of for your restaurant and start building your dream restaurant. At last, you are at the footsteps of your soon-to-be dream restaurant, so you welcome your first few guests. You also added 4 chairs and 1 fancy lamp, thinking that this is just a minor expense. Unfortunately, only then do you realize that you've only got $110 to your name, and that's not really enough to afford anything in this world. To make matters worse, you only get $28 off of your first order. The pace of the game brings you to your knees. But we'll be doing things differently this time around. And we'll be turning this horrendous mid-game disaster into something that we could actually bear. So buckle your seatbelts because we're about to cook. So you might be wondering why I chose this layout out of everything else, and a lot of people actually recommend choosing a more spacious one. However, I did choose a smaller, more compact layout, well, because it's easier to reach customers in this type of layout, especially when you start having waiters and waitresses later in the game. But if you want a really honest answer no one wants to tell you, it's all about preference, and later on you'll be destroying the walls anyway to build something new. The beginning of the game is actually something I consider as one of the hardest stages of the game, because you don't have employees and you have to do everything on your own. Not to mention, it's also at this point where you have to start figuring out what to do next to start making some more money. And when you're relatively new to the game and you don't have a guide to follow, this is gonna be significantly harder because you've got a dream restaurant in mind, but you have to get through the hurdles of the mid-game to actually get to that point. It's also at this stage where you unlock the most recipes or finish the most quests because, well, you're doing everything, and this also means that you're going to be making progress significantly faster since you'll be handling most of the activity around the restaurant, especially since you don't have any employees at this point in the game. However, I did get my first waitress to help me out, but I won't let her get in the way of my quest progress. I still strongly urge everybody to do their quests even if you have a lot of employees around. Because once we figure out the most expensive menu items, we could use that to our advantage to get the most money out of everyone. Just so you guys know, picking the UK cuisine or the United Kingdom cuisine would give you some sort of advantage because they have more expensive menu items. While I did pick UK cuisine or British food to start off with, I would recommend choosing something you like, especially if it's your first time playing the game. I don't want to ruin the experience of anyone just because they want to go faster. And let me tell you something, the differences are barely noticeable, especially if you're having fun. So yeah, there will be certain points where you'll want to min-max, but I don't want you to sacrifice the fun out of it just because you want to progress a teeny tiny bit faster than everyone else. However, I do have a couple of techniques to get us off the early game real quick and start getting into the mid game. And don't worry, it won't be strictly min-maxing. We'll also be trying to make something really nice, especially since this is a game about freedom and design. My tables are already pretty close to the kitchen, so I don't really have to move those too much. I guess I'll just go ahead and remove the walls so that it doesn't feel too cramped when working on these things. Since the rating of your restaurant doesn't really matter too much in the early game, you could go ahead and just remove everything and it'll still perform the same. We'll also be moving the customer blocks because, well, moving them to the center of the restaurant makes it easier for us to move them to their tables and they actually arrive much quicker to their destination. So at this point, you'd want to make bigger tables or maybe add more chairs to the current tables that you have so that we could accommodate more customers. As you can see, I only have 167 to my name, but it will get better later on, especially once we start getting more customers coming in. If you don't want to put too much effort into trying to get money, I recommend getting a waitress and a chef. It honestly just makes life a lot easier. Again, that's not the most efficient route, but it's something that's pretty bearable. And since it's slightly more bearable and somewhat AFKable, we can go and do some side quests. Honestly, that was nothing. I wonder what we're getting. I didn't quite see it, but I think we got a fan. Let me just yoink these to finish my quest and we can get a new menu item. I don't think these are what I want, but we'll just have to wait until we get something pretty expensive to be our sole menu item. And by sole menu item, I mean it's gonna be the only item in our menu orderable by these customers. If we have an expensive item in the menu and it's the only item in the menu, they won't really have any options but just to order the expensive item on the menu. And that just means more money for us. Well, this scrap's been bothering me for a while now, so I'll be moving it over to align it with the other table. And maybe we could also scoot it over to the side because we'll be making some expansions very soon. We also have a kind of cheesy strategy to fit more seats onto a table. And no, you won't go full sweat and go to the lowest grid size, which is I think no grid. Just one lower grid size should do, so we could kind of dangle these chairs over the side of the table and hence we could fit more people. Just remember that we only do this for the sake of efficiency. And if you think it's a little too misaligned for you, honestly just go for the regular layout. It doesn't really do you too much harm. So anyway, we proceeded to upgrade our tables, but I don't quite have enough money to finish off the last one, so we're stuck with kind of a 3-seater that looks a little awkward. I guess we'll just have to fix that up once we have enough money to deal with it and probably get a few more tables around. And now we have 2 6-seater tables and a spare table that I might consider adding a chair to once we have enough money. Right after that actually, let's put a chair down. So money should be coming in a little bit faster now that we have a higher volume of customers coming in. And there you have it, our third table is finished after just a minute I believe after putting down the first chair. So money's coming in pretty fast I'd say. And we can now set up another table. I believe it's only been a minute since we finished the other tables. So money is coming in good and we're gonna need quite a lot of it I guess when we're gonna be building our very first restaurant, since I don't really consider this a kind of restaurant. I actually have another cheese strat or tip here, whatever you want to call it. We could cramp up the kitchen to a smaller area so that the chef doesn't have to move around as much. He'll actually get the jobs done quicker because he'll just be standing in maybe one place to get the jobs done. It's been a long while since I played this game the last time, and this is actually my first rude customer. Honest to God, I have no idea what they do, but we'll just have to figure that out later. I think we could afford a few more chairs since I'm gonna be getting some money off of this next one, but I don't think it's quite enough to finish it, so the last chair will have to wait until later. I think we also have a pretty decent menu item here. It's epic, so it's probably gonna be expensive. But it's a lot cheaper than sausages and mash, so we'll be removing this from our menu and keeping the other one there because we want people to order the more expensive menu items. Alright, here goes our very first interaction with a rude customer. And I guess we just tank the shots and be as kind as we could. That's probably the right answer, right? I believe it is. And they actually reward you pretty well. I think that was pretty worth it. We still got quite a long way to go to get out of this early game hell and maybe mid game. So let's get more tables to get our money up. You guys probably noticed that this isn't the most optimized layout, but I tried the min-max strategies and it's only marginally better than this one. So I'm opting for this one since it looks a little better than the other ones and I'm not really into try-harding this game. Alright, we want 2 items on this list. Let's get the trifle first because it's one of the more expensive desserts. And I believe the beef Wellington was on the far right, which is one of the most expensive mains out there. And we'd want that in our menu to get the most money out of everybody. I know that sounds kind of exploitative, but please, I am not that kind of person.
Are you sure about that?
You probably noticed that money starts to come in slower when you add more menu items for, let's say, starters or desserts, other than your mains. But honestly, don't be too worried about that. It's only because you're now offering multiple courses. Alright, we've got our beef Wellington. We'll now replace the sausages and mash on our menu with this one because it's a lot more expensive. We now have 6 6-seater tables and we're gonna stop right there because the volume of orders are pretty high and I believe even with 3 chefs, it doesn't get more efficient than this. It's still pretty laid back with this kind of setup, so I'll probably get back to you guys once we have enough money for our next stage. Alright, we've got quite a lot of money. Well, we've got 17 grand, which is quite a lot of money, especially if you've only been playing for around 3 hours. But it's definitely possible if you have a layout quite similar to mine or maybe even better. So we'll be removing everything in preparation for our next step or stage, which is our renovation. And I think it's about time we've gotten a roof over our heads. So we kind of used up some of our money to get the back expansion, but still we've got enough money to make what we want. 15 grand is more than enough. But if I'm gonna be real with you guys, I'll be spending most of the money on menial decorations. I guess we could also do with some kitchen upgrades. I'll just write that off later since it's not really necessary, but it's something that might help with the rating. And honestly, I don't think it's that important. Damn. These are pretty expensive. Maybe I should check out my other options. The basic order counters should do. They don't really look that different. I guess we just have to color it so that it feels the same. Alright, ignore the fact that we probably overspent on our kitchen and let's just get started with making our building. I'll just put this out there. I'll be taking inspiration from Walden 7. I won't be using everything. I'll just take inspiration from certain parts so it might not look the same. But really, I just want to give it my own twist. I'm no architect, but I believe large windows are pretty trendy. But there's a specific reason why I want to use large windows for this build. So we don't really have the leg room to make large buildings. And this is exactly the reason why we're using windows. Windows psychologically makes you feel like a room is much bigger than it's supposed to be. So in layman's terms, it's basically just to cover up for the fact that we can't really build big. Unfortunately, we removed the walls we placed down a while ago, but we did keep the windows that we placed down moments ago, since those are pretty expensive and we could still use that later on. I do like the way these rounded corners look, so we'll have to figure out how to build around these. But I do think working on flooring for this one looks a little bit difficult, just because of its shape. I don't think it's possible to build flooring on that rounded corner, so we'll just cover it up and pretend it's not rounded from the inside of the restaurant. I do want to make the shape of the building a little quirky, like making an hourglass type of building, but I don't really see the point to it, especially since the area is already pretty cramped up. I don't think this is a viable strategy, and honestly, the payoff is not really that great. Well, it'd probably look better anyway if we do it like this. I guess the time will be quirky is when we have the money, the disposable income to make buildings look strange. Well, I'm pretty happy with how the walls turned out. It's time to work on the floor. Well, it does look kinda okay, but I think we could do better. Let's look at our other options. It doesn't fit the overall vibe. Makes me want to put down toilets. It makes the inside feel like it's outside. Well, snow doesn't actually look bad, but in hindsight, it looks like cement. Yeah, this is harder than I thought. Imagine doing this in real life. Okay, I think I like the way the chevrons look, but we might change it later, who knows. We did get upgraded counters, a marble counter, so maybe marble would look good. And I think it's working. Yeah, the roof. Yes, I forgot about this part. Maybe we should just experiment at this point. I'm not really sure how these would look, especially with these damn rounded corners. I actually wonder if this works. Maybe it just needs a few recolors and it might fit in. But honestly, I don't see it working. That's just money down the drain. You know what? I think a flat roof would click, but I'm not really sure, but I do see it working. You know what? It doesn't look that bad. It actually flows with the pillars that I placed down a while ago. We're probably gonna overspend at this point, but a really good door would complete the look. Well, never mind. I think this door should do the trick. It's pretty cheap, around 150. But I do think we need to put the wall down first before the door. I know it looks pretty small at the moment, but I think it still looks pretty good. I do think we spent around 3 grand for this one. Well, we did start with 10k, but that's like after the expansion, so it doesn't really count. Maybe we spent around 5,000 making this thing. But one thing I'm really worried about is the tables and chairs. Those things get really expensive. Well, thinking about it, I think the floor needs a few changes now that I'm here inside. And I think here comes the difficult part. We're gonna put down some tables. And chairs, of course. And I think we just spent another 3 grand on those. Yeah, it got pretty expensive just for the tables and chairs, but we did have some of the chairs already recently from our previous endeavors. Alright, this part is completely optional, but I do want to breathe life to the front of our store. Well, because it also matters what it looks like outside. Well, we've got the general look down right about now. We just have to change the material so it looks good from whatever angle. Alright, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks now, but I do have one small problem with it. I don't think it's possible to color the underside of the pavement. We tried our luck by changing the type of flooring we used, but unfortunately it still has that ugly lining under it. But I do think we could cover it up with some nature. These tiny bushes should do the trick, but of course it's gonna be a little expensive. It costs 110 each. But again, this part is completely optional. I'm not really sure why I'm doing this, but I'm doing it for the love of the game. We also put a couple of flowers down, but I want to change the color to something that's a little off-putting. Like some pepper on a delicious steak. Well, we've given both the bush and the flowers a recolor, and I think it looks pretty good. I do think the ratings are still gonna be low, but let's see how this restaurant performs compared to what we had a while ago. Obviously, we have more chairs and tables, but let's see if we could keep up. Maybe we need a few more chefs, and maybe we'll be getting more money this time around. I think it's time we give it a more appropriate name. And since everything looks like it's made out of clay or bricks, we'll call it the Clay Garden. But for now, let's see if this makes enough money, especially in contrast to how much we spent on this restaurant. And I think we spent around 10,000 or maybe a little more. But before all that, I think our kitchen needs a little more love. And some pillars to finish it off, and we've successfully locked up all of our chefs and we're ready to go. Alright, let's actually see if it's performing well. I'll stand out here for around 5 to 6 minutes and see how much money we get from that time span. Well, 2 grand or a little more, it doesn't seem so bad. And if you leave it out for around 15 or 20 minutes, you'll probably get all the decent upgrades that you need to get a lot more money than just 2 grand in 5 minutes. Anyway, if anyone ever makes it to this point, I really appreciate you. Thank you for watching the video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I will be making even more. And other than that, it really helps the channel out if you leave a like and subscribe. So please do.